with you, Confidant, because I like the way you sort of analyze things. 120 promises, how do you see the way he couched the promises? I noticed he personalized the promises, and for some, he had days he attached. What was your overview of the idea of telling Ghanaians that I'll do specific things in 120 days, Michael?
So the idea of 120 days, I think the convention is 100 days.
Okay. At
least from the West. There's the notion of the first 100 days of a new president's tenure.
Okay.
You know, so in the US and elsewhere, that's like, come on. I think the 120 was used so that you have the full first quarter.
Okay.
So I think that made sense. He didn't just borrow the terminology from the West, which is 100 days. I think the idea to anchor it in the first quarter made sense. So I think that was a smart move. And then there is the issue of the way the pledges are designed. Mm-hmm. There's a limit to what you can do in 120 days, mm-hmm. especially when you're a new administration and you are now forming your government. There's a limit to what you can do in the first 120 days. Expectations are high, so you need to be careful to manage expectations. I think the document that was put out was careful to manage expectations. So there are a lot of interesting things pledged in there, but if you look at the language that was used, a lot of the language speaks about starting new initiatives, launching new initiatives, commencing new initiatives, reviewing existing initiatives. All of that appears to suggest that the president knew that he needed to manage expectations. So that brings us to the question of how you evaluate, given what he put out and said I'll do, and how he sought to manage expectations with the way that the language is framed, right? If you have to do that, I'll say there are three ways you could do it.
All right.
The first one is that you judge a man on what he says he will do.
Okay.
You don't go outside of that. So that's one. So I think a lot of the discussion today will center around what he himself said he would do in 120 days. Okay. We're going to take it one by one. Has he done it? And has he done it with reference to exactly how the language is worded?
Okay.
So that's one. The second thing we can talk about are things that have happened in the 120 days that are not stated in the document.
All right.
Because there are things that have happened that are not in the document.
Okay.
So we can talk about them.
Wonderful.
The third category are things that are not in the document and things that have not happened, but are missed opportunities.
Wow.
Things that, on hindsight, could have been prioritized in a 120 days, given what we know about the state of the economy and, you know, the socioeconomic situation. You could go there.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to that third category, of course, it's up to you to decide how hard you want to go on that tangent. But I think if you were looking at things in their totality, you would need to add that third segment.
Wow.
The reason that is important is because the 120 days sets the tone for the rest of the year and the rest of the term of the administration. So I'm sure they are prioritizing the next quarter and the next quarter and the next quarter.
Wow.
So if we talk about some missed opportunities, maybe those can be prioritized in the next quarter, right? So this could be some kind of rubric.
I like it.
That could be used to talk about how the 120 days has gone so far.
So what is there and whether he's done it or not?
Yep.
What is not there but he has done? And what is not there but should have been there? That's
could
how you
have been.
Or could.
Not necessarily should, but could have been.
Has anybody done a thematic analysis of the 120 in terms of sectors? Because it was clear to me, I did not see anything in agriculture there. I saw a lot of governance, anti-corruption. I think, Mary, if I were to allocate the 26, you get the most.
Exactly.
He will not get anything. Yeah. Did you, in analyzing the 120, did you do sort of, how many of these pertain to my area? And what did you think as you looked through?
Certainly, I believe because corruption or anti-corruption in the governance space covers each sector. There is no sector that you would work on which doesn't attend to the issues of good governance. It could be agric. Certainly, you would want to promote elements of good governance therein to be able to achieve the goals you would want to. Also remember, this is a president who has had opportunity and learned his lessons from the past and is coming back in there to determine what he can do in the actual sense of the word. So for us, almost all of it, even in scholarship, it talks about issues of ensuring that we curb issues around corruption. In investigations which have to do with the Ayawasu West Wogon and others, we are looking at issues around institutions and how the institutional reforms can be effected to ensure that happens. And when there were changes, we realized that even the former IGP started the process to initiate that. So for the issues around governance and anti-corruption, each of the issues the president talked about is a cross-cutting issue, and we would want to look at it from that point of view, but also zooming in into the very specific areas. And as Michael indicated, some of them we believe are missed opportunities which were not spelled out, which we can talk about later. And for us, the missed opportunity, talking about asset declaration, talking about conflict of interest and others, without talking about the COPO bill, and that's the Conduct of Public Officers Bill, was a big missed opportunity for us in the anti-corruption space.
Wonderful.
Today, the president has launched what he calls the Conduct of Public Officers, a fantastic document, but then it is not one that can be implemented across regimes, because this is the president's pledge to the people of Ghana, focusing on the people who work with him.
I see.
And so if I become president, I hope it materializes one day. If I become president and decide that this is not a code for me, it means this wasted effort. But this is a good document that has been built on by this Code of Conduct of Public Officers Bill I am talking about. And so we need to, it's not late, as we have heard again, we need to progress into the next quarter looking at what are some of the other issues we can attend to ensure that we bridge these very glaring gaps that either intentionally were left out or unintentionally were not thought about.
Just quick comments from other panelists on what you made of the 120 before we even get into your specific thematic areas. So maybe I'll do Kofi Asari, do Prof. Ejepoma, and then Vera before I end with Professor Canton. So Kofi, any reflections on what we just went through? How does it look? Were the promises well cast, and how different is his approach?
Well, I think that ordinarily, you know, this exercise should be a very, very friendly match, in the sense that it's akin to setting your own questions and then asking us to come and mark them.
Okay.
But the difference is that we are bringing our marking scheme.
Okay. Okay.
And so, but once you said the questions, you definitely would have said the questions, taking into cognizance your might and your ability to deliver, you know, the answers. And so, for me, it's very important. Governance is like aeronautics. You know, it's all about how you take off and how you land. So if it's a plane, if it's a spacecraft, whatever it is, the two most important aspects of that enterprise is how you take off and how you land.
Wonderful.
If you don't take off well, you crash. If you don't land well, you crash.
Okay. So
for me, setting targets for citizens to hold you responsible or to hold you to account in the first 120 days is good. And it gives us the feeling that you are going to hit the ground running, because even in your first 3 or 4 months, there are strict targets you set. I mean, strict targets you set for yourself. And so it's a good thing, and that I want to encourage successive governments to do same.
I like that. So he set his own questions, but we have the marking scheme.
We have the marking scheme.
I'm getting some bullet points.
Yeah.
You may be president one day. You give us the 3. So Vera, I wonder what you would say. So because I know you do development work, but I invited you to look at youth and also inclusiveness, which is not necessarily a sector.
Right.
So in looking at the 120, how did you process it?
So for me, I think it's a smart move by the President Mahama, because ordinarily we would have just said, what did the President do in the first 100 days? Then we'll just pick and choose, we'll be looking at what he's done. But he gave us indicators, something to look out for. And that's very smart to do, to say that this is what I want to do. And also, it also shows his own priority areas he wants to target. So he says that this is what I want to do. There are a number of things. Going into the campaign, there were a number of promises and manifesto. And so there are high expectations. In fact, President Mahama has come back. There were a lot of expectations from young people that we want to see something new. And so for him to say, this is what I will do in my first 120 days, it's commendable, and to say that this is what I can do. And so now we are actually going through his 26 things that he said he wanted to do. We could have just been all over thinking about what has been done, what didn't he do, and all of that. So for me, you also realize that some of the, because youth is also cross-cutting, gender is cross-cutting, inclusion, almost all the areas you could think about, what does he really want to do? And you could sense that there was also a lot of things about job creation, something around the economy. It shows that, in fact, young people were targeted and a priority, because going into the campaign, most of the message by both parties were issues about employment. So young people were, in fact, were the main target going into the election campaign. And so for him to list the 120 days and talk about areas for job creation. If you look at education, it's about young people, scholarships, free for persons with disability in tertiary is also for young people, free sanitary. We'll go into detail, but this is to tell you that he actually was targeting more young people, and that's for me. If we don't see you there, it means that I will come to you later. But for us to see his own putting young people on the face, we say 120 days, I want to see more jobs for young people. Going into the election, there were lots of promises and all of that. I think it's
so even though he doesn't
commendable.
mention young people, you can glean it from what he's done. And you're saying that in a very smart way, he's constricting our conversation. He's giving you 26. So everybody who is discussing this has to start with his 26. So he's controlling the narrative. I didn't think about it that way. That's brilliant. Let's come to Professor Jafoma. Economy was the biggest issue for the election. But in reading this, even though I saw some economic things, I thought I would have seen more. That's how I personally saw it. I don't know whether in looking at the 26, you felt that the economy was well captured. What are your opening thoughts?
Well, I think the president has had the opportunity to be president before, and that obviously is an advantage to him. He recognizes what he can do within 4 months. And so to ensure that Ghanaians keep believing in what he says, he needs to put out what he thinks he can do within the 4 months. I think one major thing that struck me in the 120-day contract that he put out had to do with fiscal consolidation. It was there. And I think he recognizes that our major problem in this economy has been fiscal indiscipline. And so if he started off by tackling our fiscal issues, that could trickle to the other areas and ensure that we get the macro stability that we need. Ensuring that inflation comes down, for example, food inflation will take some time. You need to put in some measures to ensure that this happens. Right, ensuring exchange rate stability also takes some time, but we've seen that our currency is actually appreciating at the moment. So he didn't spell out those issues clearly, but we are seeing signs of recovery in the economy. And so what I'm trying to say is that he just wanted to put out the things that he wanted us to judge him by, and the things that he knew he could achieve within the 4 months.
Amazing stuff. And so, interesting point, I'm being told that the list is actually 25. So when we looked at the list, there was a jump from 21 to 23. So, you know, the man set his own questions, and he did a sleight of hand. There is from number 1 to 26, but when you count it, it's 25. Because if you look carefully at the document, they jump from 21 to 23. So it's actually 25 promises, not 26. Most of us didn't see it until my producer pointed that out to me. I'll come back to economy. Let me end with Professor Canton for the first round. So I was quite surprised to see that there was no explicit mention of agriculture in the 25. Is that an issue for you in analyzing his performance so far?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I will say the president did a novel thing, and I will say I will salute him. I mean, it was a bold initiative. It's also novel, and it's also a sign of servitude. To the best of my knowledge, in our continent, I have yet to hear of a president that have subjected himself to be reviewed within 100 and change, like my brother said. It's common with the Western world, but in our typical Africa or third world, it's not. So if someone have given you this opportunity, then it says the person is willing to listen to you. And don't forget, we've come from a checkered 80 years kind of debilitating environment. So that ties in very well. And like we said, you see, governance is a journey. And when you start in a journey, there are a whole lot of things you may not anticipate. You may anticipate some, and some you may not anticipate. So they come, and you pick on them. And as you rightly said, they could be missed opportunities, and there could be things that were targeted, and you may not even have been able to achieve them. So it's within that conundrum we're looking at it. And do not forget, agriculture, if you ask me, is so critical. It's novel and number one, because without agriculture, nothing works. To go back to Karl Marx's, Leninist philosophy, three key things for man is food, number one, shelter, number two, and clothing.
Okay.
So clearly speaking, you can't do without food. Good. So even though we might not have seen and clearly spelled British Standard English terms outlining typical agricultural or agrarian or agribusiness issues, yet he's done quite a number of things within that context. Sitting in front of me, I mean, just before me this morning, when your message came, I have the president's speech, which is quite detailed on the launch of the Feed Ghana program, which was held in Techim.
So this will be one of the things he didn't say,
exactly,
but he did.
Yes.
Feed Ghana.
Very detailed, yes, and very systematic, academic. Then you also have the minister go to Tamale to outline a support from a global initiative of $1 million to support my brothers up north, the 5 northern regions and the OT region.
Wonderful.
Specifically 1,500 people, comprising women and children. Very systematic. And they are using a bank. I have told government several years to work with the APR, Apex Bank. That is the rural...
ARB Apex Bank.
Exactly. Not sophisticated banks, people like you and the panelists, you feel comfortable. These are people who can go into air-conditioned facilities to talk about loans and others. And the rate even they are given, so far, the lowest Ghana has ever recorded, 10%. So I think these are novel things that, to me, if they stick to what have been started, if they continue and listen as they are showing, I think better days are yet to come. Thank you very much.